Thank you. More importantly, we need to introduce a great American, Senator John McCain. Thank you all for coming. This is an honor and a privilege to introduce truly a great American. Senator McCain has devoted his life to serving our country. Many of us have had an opportunity to serve our great nation through either military service or giving back to the community. Few Americans, however, have given as much as Senator McCain. When I look to Senator McCain, I think about my own family and the experience my father and mother endured in World War II. It was December 20th, 1943, when my mother received word from the War Department that my father was missing in action. On April 4th, she found out he was a prisoner of war. My father...
A sign, I walked by and he said, "Hey, anybody ever tell you look a lot like Senator John McCain?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Doesn't it just make you mad as heck?" So I thank you, Don, for your introduction. A dear friend and comrade from the House of Representatives and a person that I've had the honor of serving with that I think epitomizes the great ethics and standards of quality of government. Tom Petri is here, as you know, a great guy and a great friend. Really outstanding member of Congress. Reince Priebus is here. Reince, our Republican State Party Chairman. Reince, thank you very much. And the Speaker, Mike Hicks. How are you? Mike, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is that your son with you? How you doing, pal? Be proud of your dad. Thank you. Thank you, Mike, for being here. And your reward will be in heaven, not here on earth. Tom and Sue Lynch are both here. Hi, Sue. Thank you. And Tom, thank you for all your great work. Thank you for coming here today. I want to mention several issues with you, and then I'd like to respond to questions or comments, which is what a town hall meeting is supposed to be about. So I will try to make, although there's a lot of issues and challenges that we face, and I know that you wanted me to discuss all of them, but I will not, because I want to listen to your questions or comments. The reason why I'm here today with a good shot at becoming the nominee of the Republican Party is because of the town hall meeting. I went to 101 town hall meetings in the state of New Hampshire. I told them things they didn't want to hear. I told them things that they wanted to hear. But I told them the truth. And I believe that if you're going to win somebody's vote, first you got to win their respect. And I hope that I can win your respect so that I can carry this state on Tuesday and move forward and secure the nomination of the Republican Party. With your help, I can do that. And I thank you for your consideration of your support. So the first issue I want to talk to you about very briefly is the economy. As you know, the economy is not doing well. As you know, we face challenges all over America, Arizona, Wisconsin, the rest of the country. And my friends, we've got challenges and we've got work to do. But I'd like to point out to you that there are things we can do. I'd also like to point out to you that the fundamentals of the American economy is still strong. We're still the greatest exporter, the greatest importer, the greatest innovator, the greatest economic power on earth. But we've got some work to do, and you and I know that. The first thing we need to do, my dear friends, is make the Bush tax cuts permanent. If we don't, if we do not, then you're going to have the experience of a tax increase. If tax cuts are eliminated, then you're going to receive a tax increase. And let me just give you a couple of numbers very quickly, how it affects average families in America. Average families in America. If that would be a $3 trillion tax hike over 10 years if we don't make them permanent. And it would mean that 84 million women in America would receive a $2,000 tax increase. 43 million families, another $2,300 increase. 18 million seniors would experience a $2,100. The list goes on and on. My friends, we don't need to increase your taxes anytime, much less during a time of economic difficulty. Ask any economist. Ask our speaker here. Ask anybody that knows about economics, and I do, that if you want to raise people's taxes when you're in difficult times, that exacerbates the problem. So my friend, we've got to do that. We've got to do a number of things. There's a thing called the alternate minimum tax. Many of you have never even heard of it. It was designed just for a few of the wealthiest Americans. Now it threatens 25 million American families because it's gone down and down and down, deeper into American economy and wage earners. So we need to make sure that that is repealed. We have, believe it or not, the second highest corporate taxes in the world, in the United States of America. That causes businesses and jobs to leave America. Let's cut that tax cut. We need to do a lot of things, my friends, and I could go down a long list with you, and we can meet these challenges. But one of the first things we need to do is stop the wasteful, earmarked, pork barrel spending that has characterized our conduct in Washington, D.C., and is disgraceful. Now you hear about these pork barrel projects and you think it's terrible. We all know it's terrible. $3 million to study the DNA of bears in Montana. I don't know if that was a paternity issue or a criminal issue, but it was $3 million of your bucks, right? So we laugh and we cry. But what it can translate into is things that should go to the American families. In the last 2 years, the President of the United States has signed into law massive spending bills that have come to $35 billion of your money. Now, if that $35 billion had been given to the American family, it would have meant a $1,000 tax credit for every child in America. Now, which do you want? $233 million for a bridge to nowhere in Alaska to an island with 50 people on it? Or do you want a $1,000 tax credit for every child in America? I think the answer is obvious. So we've got to stop it. And it's bred corruption, my friends. That's why we have former members of Congress that are residing in federal prison. You know, I used to have an old line of Ronald Reagan's that I stole from him where he'd say, "Congress spends money like a drunken sailor, only I never knew a sailor drunk or sober with the imagination of Congress." So Ronald Reagan, that's a pretty cute line, and you know, I stole it from, I use it all the time. I'm not making this up when I tell you about 6 months ago I received an email from a guy that said, "As a former drunken sailor, I resent being compared to members of Congress." Hey, you can't blame the guy. You cannot blame him. So, my friends, I want to tell you, I'm proud to stand before you and tell you that I have never, ever, in 24 years, sought or received an earmark project from my state. And I will never do that. And I'm proud of my state, and it's done pretty well. In fact, thank you for those of you that from time to time spend some time in the winter with us. We're very grateful for that. But the point is, I will veto every big spending bill. Every earmark bill that comes across my desk as President of the United States, I will veto it, my friends, and I will make them famous. And we'll get your money back to you and spend it correctly. By the way, on the earmark business that I told you about, there was a front page story yesterday in the Washington Post that showed that I had requested no earmark project as usual. Senator from New York had gotten $324 million worth of earmark projects. The senator from Illinois, being a little junior, Senator Obama had received some $92 million in earmark projects. My friends, that's going to be a subject of the debate that we're going to have. That's going to be the subject of the debate that I'm going to have with Senator Obama or Senator Clinton, is whether we want bigger government or smaller government, whether we want to raise your taxes or lower your taxes. I want to lower your taxes. Whether we're going to have the government run the healthcare system in this country as the Democrats want to do, or we're going to have the families make their choices about healthcare in America, and we're going to talk about whether we're going to surrender to Al-Qaeda or not in Iraq. So we're going to have some stark differences, and I look forward to a respectful but very, very vigorous debate about the future of this country. And before I go any further, I would just like to say I respect Governor Huckabee. I like him. I think that if he wants to stay in this race, he's certainly entitled to do so, and I expect his decision on that. I intend to compete for the nomination of the Republican Party, and I'm pleased at the way we're going, and I'm sure you may have heard that Governor Romney was kind enough yesterday to endorse my candidacy, and I'm proud of the race that he made. And I know you're proud of the race. And I appreciate it. appreciative of his support. I want to mention three other things with you very quickly. One, my friends, on a day like today, I hate to use the words global warming, so I will use the words climate change, okay? Look, I'd like to put it to you this way, as briefly as possible. My friends, suppose that we who believe that greenhouse gases are threatening our planet, suppose that we are wrong in our assessment. But we go ahead and we embrace green technologies. We develop automobiles that can go 50 miles or 100 miles on a battery, that we do hybrids, that we do ethanol, that we do nuclear power. By the way, nuclear power is an important component. It doesn't have greenhouse gas emissions. And the United States Navy has sailed ships around the world for 60 years with nuclear power plants on it. We've never had an accident. And by the way, we always imitate the French, as you know. 80% of their electricity is generated by nuclear power. And by the way, in case you missed it, we now have a pro-American president of France, which shows if you live long enough, anything is possible in this world, as you know. So I'm not going to ask anyone to shiver in the dark, but I am going to ask Americans to embrace these green technologies. They're good for America. They're good for the world. They're good in every way. And my friends, there's another component of this I just want to mention to you briefly, and that is, do you know, I'm sure you know, but do you appreciate the fact that $1 billion a day, about $400 billion a year, is going out of your pockets to oil-producing countries, many of whom aren't friends of yours? Some of that money ends up in the hands of terrorist organizations. This is a national security issue, my dear friends. It's a national security issue. I don't know if you saw the paper or the news yesterday that Chavez down in Venezuela said he may threaten to cut off our oil. It's clear that the reason why President Putin has the power that he has today is because of the oil revenues into Russia. And I don't believe we're going to have a Cold War again. But I think it's pretty obvious that President Putin and the Chinese are blocking us when we try to address the Iranian issue, Darfur, and other issues and challenges that face this country in the United Nations and other places. So, look, it's a national security issue as well as an environmental issue, and I hope that as a nation we can all get behind it. I know that we can. I want to first again thank Don for not only for your work as a veteran, but also your service to our veterans and your dedication to the veterans of this country. And I'm always honored when I see veterans who come to these meetings, town hall meetings. I'm very grateful for your presence, and I thank you for being here. My friends, the good news is we as Americans honor our veterans, and I'm grateful that we do. But also we got a problem, my friends, and you know it and I know it, and that's with veterans health care. We're not giving the veterans the health care that they have deserved and that they have earned. And what happened at Walter Reed, as you know, was a disgrace. I carry around with me all the time a quote from George Washington in 1789. In 1789, George Washington said, "The willingness with which our young people are likely to serve in any war, no matter how justified, shall be directly proportional as to how they perceive the veterans of earlier wars were treated and appreciated by their country." My friends, George Washington was right. And you know, this is a long, hard, tough war. It's very tough, and I'll talk a little bit about it next year. It's very tough, and we know of the casualties. We know how hard it's been. But the good news is that we are more rapidly than ever before able to get the wounded from the battlefield to medical care. And we are, thank God, able to save so many more of them. But we also know that there's other problems as well as those who have been wounded by these terrible IEDs. But there's also PTSD, and there's other treatment. So we have to expand the ability of the military health care as well as the veterans health care to care for our veterans. But I also want to tell you one of the big problems today, and any of our veterans will tell you, and Don, you'll agree with this, they're sick and tired of having to get in their cars and drive an hour or 2 hours to go to the VA when they've got a routine health care need and get an appointment to get an appointment or stand in line to stand in line. My friends, I want to tell you what I will do. I will give every veteran who needs some routine health care a plastic card, and that veteran will take that card to the health care provider or doctor of their choice and get the care they need immediately. No longer should they have to stand in line. On the issue of security, if I could just mention, Ryan suggested that I say, I want to tell you again and look you in the eye and tell you, I will secure the borders of this country. I will secure the borders. I will secure the borders first. And then, as president, I will have the border state governors certify that the border is secured. Americans want the border secured. I will secure our borders first. I know how to do it. I come from a state, as you know, where we have broken borders. So, and I'll be glad to discuss that more with you if you want to in our question and comment time. But I want to just mention and talk to you. I'm running for president because I want to lead this nation in the struggle against radical Islamic extremism. My friends, it is a transcendent evil. It is one of the greatest challenges in the history of our country. This is how evil these people are and how dedicated they are to counter everything that we value and believe in. You may have just seen a few days ago, these evil people put explosive vests on 2 young women who were mentally disabled. They sent them into a marketplace and by remote control detonated those explosive vests, killing them and, of course, some innocent people around. How evil is that? How terrible is that? This is the face of the adversary we are facing, and it's an implacable enemy. But I want to assure you that we will never, ever surrender, and they will. They will surrender because we are the greatest nation on earth. And by the way, as you know, there's a guy who lives now someplace either in Afghanistan or Pakistan. He's able to get out this message. He's able to recruit and to instruct and motivate these forces of evil.
They're getting squeezed on providing, because everybody can get health care. Everybody's going to the hospital. So my solution to health care is somehow, some way, we've got to get some money in individual accounts. Maybe some government money, my money, maybe my employer money, but some money that I can spend it on health care. And then if I don't spend it when I turn 65, it's my money. I get to keep it. We've got to have cost constraints. We have to put power in the individual to say, I'm going to price this clinic, this hospital for this procedure, because if I don't spend it, I get to keep it. So if we have Hillary care, we don't have cost constraints. We have problems with getting the access, and then doctors are squeezed for salary, and pretty soon doctors don't want to be. Nurses are squeezed for cost. So if we can put the power in the individual and can put somehow, some way that you get my point? Rationing, I guess. So we don't have rationing. And that's my question: is what's your solution to healthcare?
Thank you. Well, frankly, you just gave my speech, so I thank you for that. Individual choice, no government mandates, affordability and availability. The problem with healthcare in America is not the quality of care, as you know, it's the cost of care. My friends, if you like government-run healthcare systems, take a trip up to Canada before you decide that you think a government-run healthcare system is right. Also, I do not believe in mandates. Look, I believe that every American should have affordable and available health care, and I'd like to talk just an additional minute about that. But I'm not going to mandate that they do. I want every American to have affordable and available education, but I'm not going to mandate that they do. I want every American to have affordable and available housing, but I'm not going to mandate that they do. And obviously mandates mean that you're going to ratchet up the costs rather dramatically. So the problem with healthcare in America is the inflation. If you missed it, a few weeks ago there was a front page story in the USA Today that healthcare Medicaid costs have gone up over 10%. No system can be sustained with double-digit inflation, as you well know. In fact, our legislature here in Wisconsin wrestles with this problem all the time. It's eating up your budget, isn't it, Mr. Speaker? So my point is that, yes, individual choices. Why don't we give every American family a $5,000 refundable tax credit? and they can go across state lines anywhere in America and get the health insurance policy of their choice. And if they have something left over, then let them buy it, invest it in a health savings account, because basically what you're talking about is health savings accounts. And my friends, we have to do a whole lot of things. We have to try to get providers to pay for outcome-based care. In other words, there's 5 major chronic diseases in America that consume 75% of the healthcare costs in America. If someone has diabetes, then I believe you should pay that provider for a year's worth of treatment, reward them if that patient is well at the end of that. We need walk-in clinics. We need community health centers. We need we need medical malpractice reform. Any doctor in this room, I think, would tell you that many times they prescribe extra tests or extra procedures because they are worried about being sued. So, but the other thing I want to just mention in closing, because this has been the subject of 2-hour-long healthcare forums that I've been in, so I'm really shortening it. But the other aspect of this, my friends, is wellness and fitness. Wellness and fitness, wellness and fitness. We have now one of the most disturbing statistics we've heard lately is the increase in diabetes, high blood pressure, and obesity amongst young Americans. I don't know why I mentioned Kurt Schilling's name, just because he endorsed me and campaigned with me in New Hampshire, but why not have the most respected athletes in America go around to the schools and talk to young people about wellness and fitness? Why not find out here what the school lunch program is? Why not find out here what the physical education part of the curriculum in your local school is? And because wellness, unless we have a well and fit population, my friend, the consequences of that are obvious. I think the economy, I think national security, and I think health care, whether it be insurance, quality, availability, whatever it is, are the major challenges facing this nation. I thank you for your long question.
Senator.
Thank you.
Senator.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But
Are
we
you
don't.
ready for the next question?
Yes, sir, I am. But we usually just raise our hands. But given your courtesy, I'm very glad to see you.
Quick question for the Straight Talk Express. Tough question. One of the issues not being adequately addressed, which will get at your, these donations, these set-asides, that's a balanced budget. I've left you some papers. I've studied this issue for years. Our whole economy, our whole national ability to do things depends on our financial viability. We have not had a balanced budget. Our forefathers forgot to do it. So I'm going to ask you, former naval officer to former naval officer. Yes, I served under your father in the Mediterranean. I'm going to ask you, when you give this answer, your word of honor to mine. If you get to be president, for the Straight Talk Express, if you get to be president, will you, one, propose a balanced budget? Because people forget, and this is where I held Ronald Reagan to charge. He talked about a balanced budget, he never proposed one after I voted for him. I want to know if I vote for you, and I want to vote for you, but I want to know when you get in there, will you propose a balanced budget? And number two, will you fight? Will you resist? Will you do everything possible to get a balanced budget amendment in there so that our children and grandchildren have a decent country to inherit?
I've always supported a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution of the United States. I'd like to tell you that I can propose a balanced budget, but it depends on how big the deficit from earlier years are. But I will propose a balanced budget by the end of my first term. But I cannot tell you that I will do it the first year. We're looking at, right now, and a lot of it depends on the economy and a lot of other things. But your principle is exactly right. No family, no business, no organization, no group of people in this country can operate on the deficit that the federal government is doing. And I'm tired of borrowing money from China, and I'm sure you are too. So I've got to give you straight talk. I don't know if, I doubt, because given the deficits that we're running, that I could propose a balanced budget in the first year. But I guarantee that that's my goal. It has to be our goal. We're mortgaging these young people's future. And thank you for serving our country, and I hope you were more polite.
F-4 fighter pilot shot down over Laos. He went down, presumed missing in action, and about 5 years ago they found his crash site and brought back his remains. And I remember my grandfather, Colonel Arthur K. Harrell, and a bunch of your people, Mr. McCain, Mr. Carey, Mr. Dole, and a few others. I've just come here today to thank you for helping, trying to get our people back from the Hanoi and all the other POW camps. So, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. And I'm honored by his service and sacrifice to our country. You know, it's amazing now, the DNA, how we are still, by the way, we still have teams over in Vietnam that are searching for crash sites and remains. And as far as I'm concerned, we will never, ever stop until the last one is accounted for. Standing in the back, there's a couple of people there, if you, maybe we could, there you go. Yes, ma'am.
As the presidency, as the campaign goes on, this is the ultimate interview. So I'm going to ask what every interviewer asks an interviewee. What do you think is your greatest weakness?
My greatest weakness? I have very little taste in clothes or music, according to my children anyway. I'm impatient sometimes. Is that enough? Not enough. She shook her head. No, it's not enough. Let me count the ways. You know, I don't know any parent that wouldn't like to be a better parent to their children. I think all of us think sometimes we fall short because we are human beings. I'm so proud of my children, but maybe I could have been a better parent in some way. I can only say to you that I have made many mistakes in my life, and I am a great believer in redemption, and I'm a great believer in fixing those mistakes and moving on and making sure that you don't make those mistakes again. So I have made many mistakes, but I have strongly believed in reconciliation. We were talking about Vietnam. After that war was over, I moved to heal the wounds of that war, so to normalize relations between our two countries, because I thought it was important to help our veterans come all the way home, who, by the way, were not as well treated as we treat our veterans today, I'm sorry to say. But, so I believe in that, and I can chronicle many weaknesses and failings to you, but I'm very proud to have had the opportunity of serving my country. Yes, sir. Registered background. No person who doesn't believe that there will be more conflicts. We are facing an implacable enemy that I talked about before. There will be more conflict. That has been the history of our country, unfortunately. And for me to say that there will not be, but also your point is very important. Thank you. I know you're proud of this handsome young man. Obviously, he takes after his mother. That's right. Can I say that one of the many failings that unfortunately we're having a very tough time with is that we didn't expand the Army.
Shoulders who can, our troops can follow in this war confidently, knowing that the blood is not going to be spilled cheaply. And I would also ask a commitment from you that we will be as fiscally sound as possible. But of a greater concern is the war to me. And our commitment to you, when you think about your campaign trail, you remember La Crosse, Wisconsin. Our commitment to you is that we will be praying. If you're the next president, we'll be here praying for you during the presidency.